Welcome back to the Shoot Your Shot Sports Fantasy Lifeline show with me, your host, Jordan Ballard. Hope everybody had a great week too. I did not. I went 0-3, but hey, that's life. That's fantasy football. Just because I like to consider myself an expert doesn't mean I'm going to win each and every week. I'm not out there playing with the boys. I happen to play Aaron Jones in a couple leagues. Luckily, didn't have to play against King Henry. For those of you that did, my condolences. For those of you that have one of those guys, congrats, you most likely either won and won handily. So kind of firing off with that. We had a fun weekend. Amazing primetime games. We got Lamar Jackson overcame his trouble with the Kansas City Chiefs. We had the New York Giants being the New York Giants there on Thursday. A couple other things that really stood out, man. Deebo Samuel and Mike Williams are must-start wide receivers. Those guys seem like the wide receiver ones in those offenses. Los Angeles, 1A, 1B with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Both those guys are playing well. But I expect that to continue. Injuries galore. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about them. We saw a lot throughout the day. Luckily, a lot of guys did come back. We'll touch on that in today's show. And then to kind of exclamation mark, a guy that I've never been super high on, but it looks like he is going to be a stud out there in Los Angeles for the Rams, Cooper Kupp. With his new quarterback, Matt Stafford. Through 2 weeks, we're looking at 16 catches, 271 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He's really moving up the ranks. If you can grab him, grab him. If you have him, congrats. We can discuss Robert Woods a little bit later, but for the first time, I think there's a true number one in Los Angeles, and his name is Cooper Kupp. So today, same schedule as last week, guys. Again, got a good buddy of mine, Ross Scanlon, joining me from Denver today for our interview, one-on-one, in the Lifeline. Let's get started here. Well, the injury bug has bit again. Not quite, I feel, as serious as this time last year. We were talking the likes of Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley, but hey, we know the game of football. We're going to see a lot of injuries. Like I said earlier, luckily a lot of these guys were able to come back. And in today's segment, I really don't have a ton. I waited as long as possible to try to get as much information that I could from the ground. But right now we're in a lot of TBD states. We have Dara Henderson. I think is probably the most important injury we're gonna have to deal with this weekend. Bruised his ribs. I think that's what they're saying. Sounds like he's day to day. Again, if you have Darrell Henderson, if you have a spot on your roster, go out, grab Sony Michel. I think moving forward, Michel's going to have a place in this offense. Darrell Henderson is definitely the playmaker and is going to be worth starting in most weeks if he's playing. They have a tough matchup coming up the Bucs this week, so I don't actually love either of those guys, especially coming off an injury. But if you have Darrell Henderson, you're going to have to do what you got to do to get by for probably a couple weeks while they take care of those ribs, knowing where that running back room sits in Los Angeles. We had injuries to Tua, Wentz, Dalton. Again, all those are sitting in kind of that TBD state. Dalton, they say if he's healthy, he's going to play. I don't love Dalton on a gimp leg going into Cleveland, but I'm not Matt Nagy or Ryan Pace. Wentz has 2 sprained ankles, so we'll see what happens there. And then Tua, again, I think we're dealing with the rib injury there that it could sideline him a week or so. Again, we're going to start hearing some more of the Deshaun Watson calls. Keep an eye on it. I can't say much except keep an eye on it. It's keep an eye on it. We'll see what happens between those 3 quarterbacks. Some of the guys that played with him, I thought played well. They're still going to be able to put up numbers. I'm not making too many drastic changes, but I will dive into some of those a little bit later. The 49ers running backs, I have no idea what's going on in San Francisco. The last 2 years, every running back's gotten hurt, and it's been somewhat of an extended absence. Elijah Mitchell has a shoulder problem. Trey Sermon had 1 carry and got concussed, although that carry looked good. And JaMychal Hasty, I think he's on the IR now. So I don't know what they're going to do out there. Might be time to start looking at old Jeff Wilson, dropping him into your lineups, trying to get Trey Sermon. Again, keep an eye on it. I don't know what's going on. I wish I knew more. I don't. Biggest receiver injury was probably Deontay Johnson. Again, that's one that is to be determined. Not sure. Keep an eye on the Steelers wire and see what they're saying there. The 2 I do know, Tyrod Taylor was having an awesome game. It was really exciting to see him come out and play well. they put him on the IR. He will be missing the next 3 weeks at a minimum. Davis Mills is going to step in for a start, kid out of, I believe, Stanford. Hey, you know what? He played decent that second half. He wasn't Tyrod. Tyrod was playing extremely well. But again, Brandon Cooks, I think, is the only startable player in that offense. I'm still starting him no matter what. And then Jarvis Landry, he was sent to the IR, a guy that's been known to have some soft tissue injuries over the years. He will miss the next 3 weeks. My expectation is that Odell Beckham is back this week. Uncertain. They've said that every week. He's not played. If neither of those guys play, I like Rashard Higgins. I like Donovan Peoples-Jones. I might be even taking a streamer on David Njoku if I have to. Keep an eye on what they're saying out of Cleveland. And again, if Odell's playing, I'm not probably not taking too many streamers on the other guys. But if not, I'm taking a look because the Bears, while they played excellent against Cincinnati, they're a top 10, top 12 defense, and I think that that if you get the play action going, the Browns will be able to throw the ball. So that's really, those were some of the main injuries. Luckily, we're not looking at any any season ending yet. But hey, keep an eye on the watch. Great waiver wire this week. After week 2, there were some people that really came out of their shell. Some guys I've been high on for a couple years actually now. Most importantly, I think we'll start here with Tony Pollard. Now, he might not be available in all your leagues. Potentially, he was drafted as a handcuff to Zeke, but if he is out there, you gotta go get him. That's a top offense in the NFL, and it's clear that he's gonna get touches week in, week out. You have to strategically plan when you start him, but he's going to be really nice to have on your bench. After that, we got Michael Pittman. I've been high on Michael Pittman for, since he came in the league last year as a rookie. Has not, he had Rivers last year. They never really connected. Yesterday felt like his breakout game, and then Wentz goes down. So we'll have to see how it goes, but I still felt he played well with Eason. He had 12 targets in the game. He catches for 123 yards. I expect that to continue. He is the number 1 receiver in that offense. Following that, Rondale Moore, kid out of Purdue, in that air raid offense in Arizona. Think he fits that really, really well. Important stat out of that game it was actually DeAndre Hopkins' lowest target share. So something you want to see as a Rondale Moore owner, not necessarily as a DeAndre Hopkins owner, but in an offense where he can see, I believe it was like 7 catches and a touchdown. He's definitely worth running, sprinting to the waiver wire and getting picked up. We're keeping an eye on the Dara Henderson injury, but I believe Sony Michel is definitely he's ownable now. He's somebody that should be rostered. If he's out there, go grab him. He's going to have a piece of this offense moving forward. I do still think Dara Henderson is the running back you want to own in that offense, but going into a tough matchup with the Bucs, and where that running back room is sat, it is, if anything were to happen to Henderson long term, Michel's going to be able to step in and do very well. He came in 10 carries, 46 yards. He's gonna be fine if you're comfortable with Henderson. If not, he's gonna have some running back depth in that really, really shallow running back market we have right now. And then to end it out, a guy that I don't usually love, but he's gonna definitely be worth rostering here. Cordarrelle Patterson had 2 touchdowns for the Falcons. He's clearly semi-full point in that offense. I still think it should run through Pitts and Ridley, but I'm not the offensive coordinator. Because he carries that running back and wide receiver designation, he's going to be pretty valuable to have. You're going to be able to slide him in those weeks where you might have a bye week, you might have an injury. We all know what happens. So he's going to give you some depth, some solid depth. If anything were to happen to Mike Davis, he almost becomes a must start. So that's what we're looking at with the waiver wire this week. A couple bonuses, Derek Carr, Justin Fields. I would definitely roster both of those quarterbacks. Carr went up against the Ravens and the Steelers. Neither of those defenses are a slouch. He currently leads the league in passing yards. He's got Ruggs, he's got Waller, he's got Renfro, Drake out of the backfield right now. I like what that offense is doing. I think the Raiders are moving in the right direction. And everybody knows Justin Fields. We just don't know what he can be. If he's a Jalen Hurts, you're gonna want him on your team. He's got a ton of weapons around him. Guy can run, he can throw. He's going to be viable as a fantasy option if he gets that start. So roster him. Let's take a chance on him. And, it's always fun to have, one of the top rookies when he starts to break out. Let's take a look at some of the guys that I am trying to buy coming into this week. Buy means, hey, I think that their value is sitting in an area where if you can force a trade, the return that you're going to see in the trade is going to be higher as the season moves along than that person is at this current state. Again, not saying everyone's going to be willing to work with you, but these are some of the guys that I'm targeting based on the first couple weeks of action here. Number one being Cortland Sutton. I think Sunday really showed that his knee is just fine. Vic Fangio said, hey, his knee is just fine. They're going to feed him the ball. With Jerry Jeudy out, it's going to be his offense. There is that number one receiver, and I expect him, not only to be a deep threat, but to be that possession guy as well. In addition to Cortland Sutton, I know that he was drafted pretty high, but Austin Eckler, and I'm buying him just because I think he could end up being a top 3 fantasy running back this year, based on target share. The guy's seeing a ton of touches, ton of targets, especially in a PPR league. He's somebody that I'm trying to actively go out there and get on my roster. And again, we can watch for him if he has a down week. Somebody's sitting on a really good handful of running backs. You can try to pull him in. He's somebody that if I get the chance to, I'm going after Eckler because I love the way they're using him in that offense. Outside of that, I think the Will Fuller sitting out for an additional week got Jalen Waddle some more love. I know he was a high draft pick. He did not seem to get as much of the press that Jamar Chase got, as much as the press that Devontae Smith got. But hey, he was the second drafted wide receiver, and him and Tua clearly have a good rapport. They're building the offense around him. He's going to be there in the future. I think he's one of their best playmakers. As long as Tua comes back and is able to stay healthy, I really, really like Jalen Waddle. I think you can get him for pretty cheap now. He might even be on the waiver wire in some of those leagues. Highly doubt it, but if he is, run out there and grab him. I talked about it here a minute ago, but you got Darnell Mooney, you got Allen Robinson, and if Justin Fields takes the helm of that offense, those guys' stock is going to rise. Per Drew Steinwig, my buddy that was on here last week, there was a handful of balls off hands, balls going through the hands. Those guys are going to get their timing down with Justin Fields and are going to start to really put up numbers that make them more starting. And based off of their 2 semi-rough outings, their stock may be down, but that's when I want to buy them. So you get a chance, get out there. Hey, even David Montgomery, I highly doubt people are trying to put off running backs, but hey, you get a chance. I like that Bears offense. I like where they're going with Justin Fields at the helm. So keep an eye on that. And if Justin Fields is the guy, let's go for these wide receivers and see what we can make happen. Let's see who I'm. Let's take a look at some of the guys that I am trying to buy coming into this week. Buy means, hey, I think that their value is sitting in an area where if you can force a trade, the return that you're going to see in the trade is going to be higher as the season moves along than that person is at this current state. Again, not saying everyone's going to be willing to work with you, but these are some of the guys that I'm targeting based on the first couple weeks of action here. Number one being Cortland Sutton. I think Sunday really showed that his knee is just fine. Vic Fangio said, hey, his knee is just fine. They're going to feed him the ball. With Jerry Jeudy out, it's going to be his offense. There is that number one receiver, and I expect him, not only to be a deep threat, but to be that possession guy as well. In addition to Cortland Sutton, I know that he was drafted pretty high, but Austin Eckler, and I'm buying him just because I think he could end up being a top 3 fantasy running back this year, based on target share. The guy's seeing a ton of touches, ton of targets, especially in a PPR league. He's somebody that I'm trying to actively go out there and get on my roster. And again, we can watch for him if he has a down week. Somebody's sitting on a really good handful of running backs. You can try to pull him in. He's somebody that if I get the chance to, I'm going after Eckler because I love the way they're using him in that offense. Outside of that, I think the Will Fuller sitting out for an additional week got Jalen Waddle some more love. I know he was a high draft pick. He did not seem to get as much of the press that Jamar Chase got, as much as the press that Devontae Smith got. But hey, he was the second drafted wide receiver, and him and Tua clearly have a good rapport. They're building the offense around him. He's going to be there in the future. I think he's one of their best playmakers. As long as Tua comes back and is able to stay healthy, I really, really like Jalen Waddle. I think you can get him for pretty cheap now. He might even be on the waiver wire in some of those leagues. Highly doubt it, but if he is, run out there and grab him. And I talked about it here a minute ago, but you got Darnell Mooney, you got Allen Robinson, and if Justin Fields takes the helm of that offense, those guys' stock is going to rise. Per Drew Steinwig, my buddy that was on here last week, there was a handful of balls off hands, balls going through the hands. Those guys are going to get their timing down with Justin Fields and are going to start to really put up numbers that make them more starting. And based off of their two semi-rough outings, their stock may be down, but that's when I want to buy them. So you get a chance, get out there. Hey, even David Montgomery, I highly doubt people are trying to shift put off running backs, but hey, you get a chance. I like that Bears offense. I like where they're going with Justin Fields at the helm. So keep an eye on that. And if Justin Fields is the guy, let's go for these wide receivers and see what we can make happen. So yeah, let's see who guys. We've been bitten by a couple of high draft picks, not necessarily playing out to where we expected. And that's why I think it's important to hear someone tell you, hey, just hold on for a little longer. Let's see what these guys can do. I'm going to start with my tight ends. The George Kittle, Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts, where we're going between kind of 3 and 6 in most drafts, have really underwhelmed this year. And guys, it's a bummer when you take a tight end that high, expecting him to give you the Kelsey and Waller numbers, or even T.J. Hockenson has been excellent, who was someone that I was on my buy list last week. Let's give these guys a chance to come into their own. The replacement I think you're getting from those guys is really not going to be there. Now, if someone offers you a trade, someone's trying to really come at you, get you to sell those guys low, or hey, maybe you can sell them high. Hey, take a shot. But I'm sitting on those guys. I still have faith that they're going to get there to their 50, 60 yards a game, going to start getting their touchdowns. Again, in all of those offense, there's been some issues. We know what's up with the 49ers and the Ravens. They don't have any running backs. And they just look lost in Atlanta. Luckily, they were able to get Pitts a little bit more action. But hey, let's hold on to those guys for a couple more weeks. Let's see what happens. Don't go doing anything too crazy or rash just yet. Another one, Zeke. I hate to say we have to talk about holding him, but after a week where we had like 19 fantasy points. I think he had 100 yards and a touchdown. You have some catches in there if you're in a PPR league. That's likely the week we're going to be looking at, guys. I don't think the return you're going to get for Zeke is worth it. I think Zeke's going to be a really good top 8 to top 12 running back week in, week out, and how the depth of the running back pool is. It's very, very shallow. He's somebody that's never missed a game aside from suspension. So the guy's always going to play. He's always going to be durable. You're going to wish you had him when we go into the back end of the season, when the Cowboys really start pounding the ball and really leaning on a fresh, healthy Zeke and their push for the playoffs. And then another one, Brandon Ayuk. A lot of talk about Ayuk. It's been an interesting first 2 weeks now to say he's actually the third leading target. He's seen the third most targets in that offense, but behind Deebo Samuel, behind George Kittle. Now, what we do know in San Francisco is we got no running backs. We have two receivers that can run the ball, in Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. Samuel's, they're going to need to get these guys touches. They're going to need to fill in for those running back touches. I think Ayuk is the one that's going to benefit the most from this really, damaged running back room. They're going to have to get into the offense. As soon as he gets in the offense, starts making plays, he's hopefully going to get off whatever crap list that Kyle Shanahan has him on, and he's going to play well. Don't go selling him yet. We know he can be a big play guy. Let's take our time. Now, I'm not necessarily saying start him, but he's somebody that I know what he's capable of. You know what he's capable of. Let's see how Kyle Shanahan, kind of works with the weapons that he has. I think that's going to benefit Brandon Ayuk. So let's hold on to these guys. Again, we go 1 or 2 more weeks with these tight ends. We're going to be talking about tight end strategy, probably by week 4 or week 5. Hope we don't have to get to that point because I own guys like Andrews and Pitts. I was very high on them. When you're taking those guys in rounds 4 and 5, you really need them to pan out where you expect. So that's what we got. Looking forward to seeing who I'm going to sell, and I'm begging you guys, don't. All right, 3, 2, 1. What's up, guys? I'm here on the Lifeline with my my buddy Ross from Denver. Welcome, Ross, man. Really glad to have you, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jordan. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so I got a chance to meet Ross through another one of my friends. Probably 6-7 years ago now. At this point,
it's been a minute.
Out in Denver, and one night we're drinking, having a good time, and we just start talking fantasy football, and we went a few hours in, and I'm like, hey, there's not a lot of people that I meet that I could sit here and bounce 20 years of fantasy football knowledge off of, and so that's why I was excited when he said, hey, yeah, I would love to come on. So I'd love to give everybody a little idea of when you started playing, what got you into it, how are things going for you this year, how many leagues you in, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So shoot, man, I started playing back in college, so it's probably been 13, 14 years ago. Started out with just the college buds, pretty low buy-in at that point. We were all broke college students. But over time that evolved. We've since gotten jobs. As you mentioned, I moved from Ohio to Colorado, met a new friend group, acquired new fantasy leagues. So I started from the onesies and twosies and have worked my way up to, I think, 6 leagues at one point. I've scaled back a little bit. I've got 2 young kids now, so I dropped it down to 4, a little more manageable. But I played across all different types of scoring platforms, types, multiple QBs, PPR, non-PPR. I am doing my first dynasty league this year. Really excited about it. A completely different dynamic to how you draft. I put a lot of emphasis on younger players that I think have potential to break out. So I went really young. Maybe not. I might not have the team to win this year, but a couple of years from now, I'm going to be in the running for sure. But with me, I always like to try to cast a broad net, get in as many leagues as I can. Historically, I can bring home the title in 1 or 2 leagues, and it generally will pay for my buy-ins and make me profitable in the long run as well. But absolutely love fantasy, man. I'm definitely into it. Something I'm super passionate about, and can talk about it all day long. So, really stoked to be.
We're 2 weeks in. How you feel about your teams?
I knew you were gonna ask you that. I knew you were going to ask me that. I'm a little nervous, to be honest with you. Probably the roughest start I've had in, I couldn't even tell you how long, maybe ever. So I had mentioned I'm in 4 leagues. I am 1-7 through 2 weeks. 1-7. But I've in the 2-week time period, I've put up the second highest score 3 times now, and I've gotten beat by the guy that puts up the most in the league for the week. So. Just some bad luck, man. But I've done it enough. You just got to stay the course and see how it all plays out. I'm not worried yet. Put it that way. We get that extra week this year, so that's nice. Points are king. That's if you're exactly.
You're putting up 76-point stinkers, it's going to be really hard to stay excited. I'm 1-5, so I don't have a ton but I love my teams. So it's again, last week I was going up against, a Kyler Murray, McCaffrey, DeAndre Hopkins combo. Like it's a really tough combo.
It happens, man.
And then this week I played against Aaron Jones in 2 leagues. So I can't, but in 1 league I was the high scorer last week. So I feel I like my depth. I haven't been, no true serious injuries yet. So it's, it's one of those where, we're 2 weeks in, trying not to get people too freaked out.
You gotta stay strong, brother. We're gonna be all right.
Hey, the Cowboys won, so I went 0-3 this weekend. As long as the Cowboys win, hey, it's we got the Brownies. We're good. We're good,
Bengals,
man.
baby.
So
Bengals. So hey,
Bengals.
Bengals are 1-1, 1-1,
1-1, man.
And the future is bright in Cincinnati.
I think so too, man. We're gonna get there.
Future's bright in Cincinnati. So we had a lot of crazy things happen this weekend. Aside from King Henry and Aaron Jones, where they put it up. What were some of the a couple of your takeaways, hot takes? What are you coming out of this weekend like? Man, I wasn't expecting that.
Man, so I think most notably a lot of injuries, and particularly to the quarterbacks. I wouldn't say any that are probably guys that you drafted high, but we had Andy Dalton go down, Tua went down, Carson Wentz, Tyrod Taylor, and so what I'm doing when I see quarterbacks go down like that is I'm trying to evaluate how long are they going to be out, what type of impact is that going to have on some of the positional players within those teams. Guys that I may be concerned about, for instance, are Brandon Cooks. Tyrod Taylor was surprisingly playing at a pretty high level, right? And awesome. Brandon Cooks is clearly the guy for the Texans. So that's something I'm going to monitor over the next couple of weeks. If I start to see his production decline a little bit, and I know Tyrod's going to be back in let's say 2 or 3 weeks, is it a chance to buy low on a guy like that? Michael Pittman had a pretty big game this past week. Seems to have a pretty good rapport with Carson Wentz. Is that going to translate if and when Jacob Eason has to take over? So those are things I'm looking at. San Francisco running backs. You saw the trio go down, right? Elijah Mitchell first, JaMychal Hasty second, and then Trey Sermon got in for 1 carry before entering the concussion protocol. But to me, that's telling a little bit, right? I think all of us going into the season had anticipated that, it was going to be Mostert, the RB1, and Sermon was going to be the backup. And then it was like that all the way through preseason. So little strange to see Elijah Mitchell, be the backup guy when Mostert went down. But clearly, from a volume standpoint, he was their guy this past week as well. So he's definitely the one I'm chasing in terms of San Francisco running backs for the time being. I'm still holding on to Sermon if I drafted him because I don't think you can give him up quite this early.
100%.
But man, I know.
I don't know
same with Ayuk. And Debo. I'm still holding on to Ayuk. I'm still trying to get him where I can. I think there's just too much talent there. I still think he's dealing with the hamstring injury from the preseason. There may be some doghouse element with Shanahan there as well, but the guy's too talented to give up on. So, yeah. But all those injuries I'm looking at, I'm trying to monitor. I'm trying to see how I can take advantage of those situations and go from there.
It's almost like you watch the show before I even interview you here, because you're gonna find I talk about a lot of these things, and it's I love Debo and Ayuk now. I think that if these running backs are out, you're not just gonna be able to pluck a guy off the street. And I think we're still 2 or 3 weeks away from Jeff Wilson Jr. returning. So,
agreed.
Debo and Ayuk are gonna get touches. They're gonna get creative, just because and we know that they can do that. They've been in the offenses, past and present, that they can take those jet sweeps. They can run out of the backfield. Ayuk, I'm holding on. I'm getting him where I can because he's someone I want to back into the season. But yeah, the injuries. I've been a huge Michael Pittman guy for the last 2 years. I really want to see him succeed. I hope this is his breakout game. I talked about it, but I'm really big on Mike Williams. I think Mike Williams is now the number 1 in Los Angeles for the Chargers. I've been high on him
couldn't
for a few
agree
years.
more.
He's no longer just the deep threat. He's the possession receiver. And I'm not saying Keenan Allen's not playing well, but you have a MVP caliber quarterback there now. Mike Williams, anytime they needed a first down, they were throwing the ball to Mike Williams.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, he's such a bigger target, especially down in the red zone. And that was actually going to be my next takeaway from the past weekend or the first 2 weeks, is another thing that I try to do to get that competitive edge, is I try to follow the target share pretty closely. And there's a number of wide receivers that were taken, rounds 8, 9 or deeper, that are producing at a much higher level. Guys like Marvin Jones, Sterling Shepard, Brandon Cooks, like I mentioned, Mike Williams, another prime example, Debo,
Debo.
I mean, you're talking
Corey Davis. Corey Davis was at like 11, 12.
He had an off game last week, this past week, but I mean, these guys,
Zach Wilson, those are going to be up and down, but I still like that's a tough matchup. Some of those he should have had at 50 yards and 5 catches. I saw some of those throws. They get Zach Wilson to calm down. I think Corey Davis is going to be fine. I'm still not, I want to see where that goes. But I still think he's the best offensive player on the team they have. But I agree with you.
Agreed.
That was my bread and butter. I was loading up on as many coming into the season. I was loading up on as many running backs as I could and stashing as many of those middle round receivers. And it's paid off. And I feel really good at where I sit. So,
and I would say conversely, if you've got, let's say you're loaded on running backs, or you're loaded on wide receiver, right? Or maybe you're a little light on running backs. If it were me, I wouldn't have any problems, packaging a higher caliber wide receiver 1 to go out and get 2 of these guys that I just mentioned to pair them with my running backs that are already, solid. I have no problem rolling these guys out as long as they're going to see, 10 plus looks a game.
And if I've learned anything, as I've gotten smarter, last 5 to 7 years, the depth come weeks 12 through 16 is going to be key. You look back at the rosters of the winning fantasy championship teams, and it's like, who are half of these guys? And so I just feel that, like you said, target share is going to be huge. One more question for you, and then we'll wrap it up here. What's your take on the tight ends? We had was a lot of tight end talk. Kelsey and Waller have played as expected. Hawkinson is probably the tight end 3 now. How are you feeling about guys like Kittle and Pitts and Andrews and Goddard, where we were really high on those guys trying to get into that top 3, and it's just been wah wah wah.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned with a few of them. I think Pitts is going to come around. I have full confidence in Pitts. I just, that offense is going to run through him and Ridley. It just is. They've been a little slow out of the gate. But they're going to figure it out. I mean, you've seen a lot of offenses be slow out of the gate. I mean, look at Green Bay week 1. Look at the Saints week 2, who wiped the floor with Green Bay week 1. It's football, right? It's like these guys are still trying to get their schemes and their systems in place. So you got to be patient with these guys. But yeah, in terms of the tight ends, I think Waller, just from a target share standpoint, same with Kelsey. Those guys are going to get theirs week in and week out. I think Pitts is going to grow into that. And I should say the same for Hawkinson. He's right up there with those 2 guys. Pitts is going to get his. I'm a little concerned about Andrews. I do have a share of Andrews that I got pretty late. But I don't know. It seems like Lamar's targeting his receivers a little more this year. Hollywood Brown it seemed like he's made a step forward. Sammy Watkins produced well week 1. And with the absence of their running game, or at least trying to figure that out, Lamar's going to use his legs as well. So I don't know. I'm concerned about Andrews. I'm concerned about Goddard. Have not seen the targets that I would like to see there. I know. And Ertz
is still on the team.
Exactly.
He was drafted as if Ertz was just going to disappear, and so I was always staying away from the guy. But Andrews. So I got Andrews late. I got Andrews like in the 6th round, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to take this because this is. I'm happy having a top 10 tight end in round 6. Now, hey, do I wish I would have taken Gronk? Now, actually, you'll see a segment I did sell. I'm trying to sell Gronk now at his height,
absolutely,
to stock up. But
absolutely, I would be doing the same.
Things. What I think is going to help and Mark Andrews the most is the return of Bateman, because it almost seems as if, and again, I could be wrong, but I've watched these games pretty closely. You got Andrews flying up the seam, opening up the middle of the field for Hollywood Brown, for him to kind of catch a 8 to 10 yard ball and do his thing. When Bateman's able to extend the field, I think we're going to see some better matchups for Andrews. And I just like that Lamar seems to be throwing the ball
strong.
well.
Yeah, I agree.
Throwing the ball
he's looked great. Yeah. Hopefully he's taking the next step forward. But, I mean, Logan Thomas, I think he's another guy that's right up there, probably around the Andrews range. Through 2 weeks, I mean, he's looked consistent. And, with the quarterback change from Fitzpatrick to Heineke.
Hey,
we'll see,
as long
man.
as
a lot of
Heineke,
times they'll dump.
as long as these guys can get 2 consecutive games with the same quarterback, McLaurin and Logan Thomas are going to be excellent fantasy options. So
I think so too.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate you coming on here. It was really nice to catch
Thanks
up.
for having me again, man.
Won't be the last time this year, and I can't wait to get out to Denver. See you and the kids. Till then, best of luck to your Bengals.
Anytime, man.
And hopefully we're talking late in the season with us both going to a championship.
Would love to, man. Thanks for having me on, Jordan.
See you, buddy.
See you, bud.